everyone. I'm Dawn Johnson. I'm the Vice President of Partnership Services here at the Bowling Green Chamber. And I want to welcome everyone to today's business to business resource call. We will be hearing from Kentucky Auditor Mike Harmon on the escalating issues surrounding the Kentucky unemployment fraud issues. But before we get started today, I do have a few housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded, so please keep your mics on mute for the duration of the presentation. If you have questions, you can submit them via chat window. Erin just showed you a sample of what that chat window is. And we will have a Q&A portion at the conclusion of the presentation. So we will read all your submissions for our presenters to answer. So just you can write the questions as we go, that's fine, and we will get them answered. With that, I would like to introduce our guest speaker today, Auditor Harmon. He was elected in 2015 as the 47th Auditor of Public Accounts for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. He was elected in 2019 for a second term. Mr. Harmon previously served in the Kentucky House of Representatives for 13 years. In addition to his background in public service, Mike learned the value of hard work and responsibility through his experience in business, particularly insurance and banking. He has previously served as Vice Chairman at the House Standing Committee on Tourism and Energy and was a member of the Committees for Banking and Insurance, Elections, Constitutional Amendments, and Intergovernmental Affairs. Thank you, Auditor Harmon, for joining us today, and I will now turn it over to you.
Sounds great. Thank you. My pleasure to be here today. Certainly, I always enjoy when I get an opportunity to get down to the Bowling Green area, but sadly, a lot of these we're having to do via Zoom, but at the same time, at least we're having the opportunity to visit with people. Now, the downside of Zoom is everybody knows I always like to start with something funny, and when you're doing it on Zoom, you don't know if people are laughing or if they're crying or if they're just wishing you had not told that joke. But one of the things I like to relate is that after the 2019 election, a lot of people don't realize, but now I am currently the oldest currently serving constitutional officer, not by one, not by two, but by almost 10 years. Our very closest constitutional officer is Secretary Adams. Is almost 10 years difference between us. Everybody else is even younger than he is. So as you can imagine, being the oldest currently serving constitutional officer, the other day I was looking in the mirror and feeling a little down, because I'm the old guy on the block, and my lovely bride comes by, and I look at her and I look in the mirror, and of course my wife and I have been married 30 years, so we love each other dearly, and we can be honest with each other. And I look at her and I say, honey, I look so old and I look so tired. Can you tell me just one good thing about myself to make me feel good about myself, to uplift me? And she looked and she thought and she looked and she thought, and finally she said, well, at least your eyesight's still good. So now, I guess if you're an auditor, probably it's good to have good eyesight. She didn't actually say that, obviously. So I don't know if there was any booze there or anything, but certainly it's always good to laugh. It's always good to laugh. Laughter is one of the many things that, that helps, pep us up and bring us back on track. And dealing in even pre-COVID, I served 13 years in the Kentucky General Assembly, and we dealt with a lot of serious issues in the auditor's office. We deal with a lot of serious issues. And so sometimes it's just important to stop and laugh to try to renew your soul in that regards. Now, just as a quick primer, we at the auditor's office are not the IRS. So if any of you all are working hard to get your taxes done, don't worry, we're not auditing you. We're actually the people's auditor. We work for you. We basically help government be efficient, effective, and ethical, and that's kind of our role. I describe it that, as well as we kind of talk about the fact that we operate as those guardrails for government. Now, during the pandemic, early on, we went very quickly to teleworking. The governor had asked a lot of the state employees early on, he'd asked to go to 50%. Well, we were probably already at 75% at the time that he asked us to go to that. And obviously we went to that very quickly. But thankfully we had, and we continue to put structures in place that allow us to do that efficiently and effectively even though we were off site. And certainly I want to thank all our county officials throughout the state, as well as our state officials who worked with us to make sure that we got the information so that hopefully it appeared we didn't really, miss a beat when it came to making sure that we still served the taxpayers of the state. Now, no matter whether it's government or our business community, both large and small, certainly the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted all of us greatly. Of course, one of the biggest impacts to Kentucky happened March of 2020, when due to the pandemic, the governor made the decision to close many businesses. Early on, there were some recommendations, even nationally, for first couple of weeks to kind of close some things down, try to see if we can get our arms around the situation with this pandemic. Certainly, that put thousands of our friends and our family members out of work, forcing them to file for unemployment, which brings us to why I'm here, which is to discuss two recent audits that are of great interest to the business community as well as the state as a whole. Multiple problems within the unemployment insurance systems were detailed in the first and second volumes of our statewide single audit of Kentucky, or SWAC as we call it, for fiscal year 2020, which ended June 30th of 2020. Now, we are required to conduct these audits of state government each year. SWAC Volume 1 looks at the state's financial statement, while Volume 2 looks at compliance with federal program requirements. Now, as always, we just follow the data. We find the data, we confirm the data, and then we report the data. Now, Volume 1 was released in February, and Volume 2 was released by my office in late April, really just a couple of weeks ago. Volume 1 of the SWAC had 25 filings. Half of those dealt with a little more than half dealt with the Office of Unemployment Insurance and Kentucky's Unemployment Insurance Fund. Now, in March 2020, when many businesses were shut down, this caused a massive influx of UI filings on the state's unemployment system. During the week of March 21st, 2020, there was more than 49,000 new unemployment claims filed in Kentucky. And of course, the following week, there was a little over 113,000 claims filed. So as you can imagine, a lot of claims are coming in rapidly. Now, our auditors found that in a rush by OUI leadership and the administration to pay these new claims out as quickly as possible, decisions were made that led to violations of federal law and sacrificed program integrity. I'm sure many of these decisions were made with well intent, but certainly many of them created additional problems. So in other words, just as I said, their intentions were good, but they led to bad results. Now, OUI leadership decided to adopt an auto pay policy, which allowed UI benefits to be automatically paid without requiring claimants to report their weekly wage information, which certainly is essential to determining whether someone is actually eligible to receive these UI benefits. This decision was made despite the objection of long-term employees within the Office of Unemployment Insurance, as well as COT, which is the Commonwealth Office of Technology. Now, the auto pay policy was in place really just for 2 weeks for traditional unemployment, and 8 weeks for what is known as the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. Pandemic Unemployment Assistance was one of the 3 new federal unemployment programs created by the CARES Act. Now, the other 2 programs were the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation and the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation. The first one I talked about, that one was extending, well, one of them, the very first one, the PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, that was for your traditional, like your gig workers or those people that are self-employed. The Pandemic Employment Emergency Unemployment Compensation, would extend for 13 weeks those receiving that had run out of their traditional unemployment, and the FPUC, or the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, that was that additional $600 enhancer now per week. Now, during the auto pay period, more than $655 million was paid out in unemployment insurance benefits. Now, while not all the payments were improper, these UI payments were all paid in an environment that was high risk and highly conducive to improper or even fraudulent payments. A good example of the problems my office found with AutoPay was full-time state employees receiving UI benefits. Our auditors selected a sample of 37 state employees. These were full-time state employees who were receiving unemployment and benefits. And remember, as I said, they were still full-time. I don't know if you recall, but early on, the governor as well as others were promoting, if you've lost any income at all, go out, apply for unemployment compensation, and many of these did. Now, of these 37 sample that we looked at, we found that 16 of the employees received both traditional and federal pandemic unemployment compensation benefits for the loss of a part-time job, despite still being fully employed with the state. Just as I said, these were still full-time employees. Now, normally claimants are required to report any earnings during the week for which they are claiming benefits. And certainly and their full-time state wages in this particular case would have made these employees ineligible for benefits. Now, but because those controls were turned off due to AutoPay, their full-time wages were not taken into account because they weren't asked to report them. Now, while the sample of 37 we found, in the sample of 37 that we found, that we looked at, as a whole, there was a net overpayment of a little over 116, almost $117,000. Some of them were paid more than they were supposed to. Some of them were paid less. Some of them were paid the exact amount that they were supposed to receive, but there was a net overpayment of almost 117,000. And remember, this was just a sample. There were many more state employees that were receiving unemployment benefits, despite the fact they were still full-time employees. Now, in addition, we found several accounting errors and pervasive errors and miscalculations with incorrect payments to claimants and incorrect charges to employer accounts. OUI also failed to report data breaches of their system to several state agencies, including our office, in a timely manner. Now, state law requires agencies to report a data breach within 72 hours, but our office didn't receive notification until 1 month after the first breach, and sadly 2 months after the second breach. In fact, we only received the required notice after sharing that we had learned of the breach independently. Some of you may or may not know that the previous auditor to myself actually championed, and while I was in the House, I voted and supported for this particular breach law, and this particular law was not being followed in this particular instance. Another issue was that OUI could not provide my office with a reliable estimate of how much money remained owed to UI claimants. Originally, they didn't realize they were supposed to provide this estimate. Once we made them aware that they were supposed to provide the estimate, we got everything from a range of about 89 million to as high as 2.08 billion. So given that they were not confident in their numbers, certainly we could not be confident in them as well. Now, while all of these things that we found were concerning, perhaps the most shocking issue to me, and maybe the one that, and definitely the one that kind of saddened me the most, was that we found out there was more than 400,000 unread emails that were unread and just archived. Now, these were emails that were to the OUI assistants, and like I said, it's just very sad to me. We've seen stories every day of people desperate to find out about their unemployment claim, with many of them calling or emailing OUI in an attempt to get answers. Now, as I said, it just breaks my heart to know that our fellow Kentuckians who simply wanted answers were instead met with silence in this particular issue. And, it just, like I said, it breaks my heart. But that, as you may recall, as I said, a lot of people were reaching out to everybody, whether it was their state rep or the state senator. We ourselves received multiple calls and emails from individuals just trying to find someone, anyone, to be able to help them when it came to their unemployment claim. I had served 13 years in the Kentucky General Assembly prior to becoming auditor, as I said before. And, one of the things that I found out was that people, even if you can't solve their problem, if you actually listen to them, if you'll actually talk to them, if they have someone to talk to, and you try, that in many cases just does them a world of good because they know someone's listening as opposed to an automated system. I know so many of us, and myself included, get frustrated if you not on unemployment but on other issues, calling an automated system and you're just trying to find a live person. And so these people were trying to find a live person, but sadly many of them were ignored. Now, the SWAC Volume 2, much like SWAC Volume 1, was, I say this jokingly, it was kind of like the fellow that invented the corduroy pillow. It too was making headlines. So put that in there just in case to kind of wake you up in case auditing talk was getting tired there. But no, I'm kidding. But anyway, in SWAC Volume 2, we had 21 findings. 8 of those related to the Office of Unemployment Insurance and the Unemployment Insurance Fund. Now, one of the big takeaways in SWAC Volume 2 was that we found 10 employees within the Office of Unemployment Insurance access their own claims in the state's unemployment system. Now, we were unable to determine if they made changes to their own claim, but it's certainly clear that they accessed their own claim. Now, not only did these employees have the ability to access their own claims, they also had the ability to manipulate or clear holds on their claims. Now, in addition, these employees had received training specifically that they were not supposed to look at their claims. Certainly, had they not received training, I might have been a little more sympathetic towards these particular employees. However, that too would have been a control issue had they not received additional training. Now, because of the possibility that these 10 workers at the Office of Unemployment Insurance could have altered, we don't know for sure, but could have altered or cleared holds on their own UI claims, we have referred this finding to the Attorney General's Office and the Executive Branch Ethics Commission for further investigation and possible action. Now, another issue we discovered as part of the SWAC Volume 2 audit of the Kentucky's Office of Unemployment Insurance was the Office of Unemployment Insurance was not participating in what's known as the Treasury Offset Program, or TOP. Now, one area the Treasury Offset Program is used for is to recover unemployment compensation debts that remain uncollected 1 year after the debt is due. To the extent allowed by law, when a match happens, TOP withholds or offsets money to pay that delinquent debt. In federal fiscal year 2020, TOP recovered more than $10.4 billion in federal and state delinquent debts throughout their programs. Now, of that, TOP recovered roughly about $226.9 million for states that participated in the unemployment insurance program. TOP requires collections of unemployment-related debts from UI payments when those debts are more than a year old, just as I said earlier. That covers both UI payments and payments up front. Now, without obtaining permission from the U.S. Department of Labor, OUI in Kentucky suspended TOP collections on April 6, 2020, and had not resumed as of February 17, 2021. In May 2020, the Commonwealth received clarifying guidance from the U.S. Department of Labor that TOP collections could not be suspended. Again, in February 2021, a follow-up email from the U.S. Department of Labor reiterated that states are expected to continue participating in TOP. It is unknown how much Kentucky would have recovered if TOP participation had not been suspended. As I close, I would like to reflect on really just a few items. In addition to the 400,000 plus unread mails, and although not part of our audit, I was made aware when it was first evident that OUI and the Office of Unemployment Insurance, the unemployment insurance system, was overwhelmed. I was made aware that the General Assembly had offered well over 100 individuals from the Legislative Research Commission to assist with the influx of calls, trying to organize and get them ready. And for, as I said earlier, for someone to have a live voice to speak to. But that offer was declined by the administration. In fact, throughout the pandemic, it's my understanding that our legislators were never conferred with by the governor and his administration during months of problems. Now, I truly believe government works best when its leaders all work together in a bipartisan manner to solve the problems. And certainly it's disappointing to me when that doesn't happen. In this case, working together could have gotten people faster responses to their questions and faster access to UI checks they so desperately needed. Now, I'm thankful to finally see now that UI offices are beginning to reopen around the state, and also thankful uh, that legislators are looking to use federal funds to replenish the UI trust fund rather than passing those costs onto already struggling businesses. Now, we also have a huge influx of fraudulent claims being made on the system, and I've offered the assistance of APA to help work with law enforcement and others when it comes to best practices to detect and prevent fraud on the system. I believe there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, we can't replace what's been lost, but the hardworking people of Kentucky need to have the freedom to be able to get back to living and working, to laugh again, and certainly to have hope again. Now, if you're interested in reviewing either or both of Volume 1 or Volume 2 of our audit reports, or if you really want to see any of our audit reports, I would encourage you to go to auditor.ky.gov and you can do a search for them. Or if you have tips of waste, fraud, or abuse, you can go to that same site and click on our KY alert, or you can call 1-800-KY alert. And we accept tips of waste, fraud, or abuse regarding government. In addition, I would encourage you to follow our office on our social media via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. And certainly at this time, I'd be happy to entertain any questions, but thank you again for allowing me to speak to you, and thank you. God bless. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Auditor Harmon. Are there any questions? That's all. You went over a lot of information.
Thank you.
And sorry, anyone have any questions? Feel free to type in the chat.
Now, usually when there's silence and I don't get questions, I have to start telling jokes. So usually we get questions pretty quickly. So.
Well, like you said, jokes aren't a bad thing. Everybody likes to laugh.
There you go.
All right. So what are the recommended steps that should be taken when a fraudulent unemployment claim has been filed?
Sure. Well, there's, obviously you should reach out to the Office of Unemployment Insurance, but sadly, unless they've improved it recently, people still are unable to get through. I would encourage you to reach out to your local police department and just file an identity theft claim. You can also reach out to your state representative or your state senator. And certainly if you have something along that lines, you can also call that 1-800-KY alert number. Let our staff know. We do have a contact at the Office of Unemployment Insurance that we can document and then forward that on to them as well.
That's good information. Anyone else? Any other questions? Wait a second. Sometimes it takes time to type.
Yes, I do understand. I'm not one of those quick texters. I know when my daughter first got her phone years ago, thankfully we had the unlimited at the time. I think she had well over 1,000 texts within maybe the first couple of days. It was like, how are you doing that?
Yeah.
So I have a question. This may have been asked and answered, but I had to take a phone call for a moment.
Quite all right.
So as an employer, we get in a fraudulent claim. I immediately contact my employee and say, hey, we received this. You may want to, reach out to Experian or whoever their credit score people are. And then I immediately respond in writing and mail back the response to UI in Frankfurt. Anything else? I mean, I know you just kind of answered that, but is there anything else we as employers need to be aware of? And do we feel like at this point that those employees should be concerned that their identity is out there somewhere in somebody else's hands?
Well, I think they should be concerned. I don't think they should be overwhelmed by it. Certainly, I think you have to take the necessary steps. And some of the stuff that you mentioned, certainly, although I didn't mention, I think you are correct. You would probably be good to reach out to the credit bureaus and either put a freeze on or put a warning on in that regards. Also, you would want to reach out to your local police station just to be able to file a identity theft fraudulent claim in that regards, to have that documented. And certainly, as I said earlier, you can reach out to your state representative or state senator, or you can call our 1-800-KY alert number so that we can document that and forward that on to the Office of Unemployment Insurance. Certainly, it'll take a while to dig out. As I said, we offered our assistance and it was accepted in regards to the fraudulent task force that's put together. So we're working on best practices to try to address that. On that aspect of it, I do believe on that one, we're probably going to be digging out for a couple of years. But certainly I encourage everyone not to lose hope. We just have to keep moving forward.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We did get another question. What are you doing now, and what will you do to correct all the fraud?
Sure. Well, from the standpoint of the Office of Unemployment Insurance, especially since all these funds are coming in both with CARE and now ARPA, our people are, as I said earlier, these particular audits, the SWAC Volume 1 and Volume 2, are audits we do every year. In this particular case, specifically in the Office of Unemployment Insurance, with all the funds coming in, it made them much more material while there's so much more of a focus on it. Because there's so much more of a focus on it, we continue to have people in there in prepping for the end of fiscal year 2021. And that'll be here before we know it. And so we continue to work with that, as well as we're participating on the task force, as well as we're trying to work with as many people as we can to document in that regards.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. One more. As an employer, I received several notices about UI claims for which I attempted to respond. The fax number given was inoperable and the phone calls were lost in the circular automated system. Was there any explanation given about why employers are not able to contact the UI office by phone or fax?
Well, I think the biggest explanation is that they were overwhelmed. And, as I said earlier, I'm not sure why they didn't accept the help from the LRC, Legislative Research Commission. But that's part of it. As I had mentioned earlier, we document the fact that there were 400,000 plus. It's probably more than 400,000, but there was 400,000 plus that we documented, that emails that just went unopened and were archived, from that standpoint. So, it's the question they ask. I don't have a specific answer to why they're not doing it, but certainly when you hit those walls, please feel free to reach out to us. Like I said, at the 1-800-KY alert, we can document it. We've got people we've got a contact that we can get that information to them. It's unfortunate they can't do it through the normal process. Hopefully that has begun to improve. But it's unfortunate they couldn't do it through the normal process.
All right. Well, thank you. There's one more.
Will
there be new leadership or management and unemployment or UI after this disaster?
Well, that I can't speak to that. Obviously, that would be a decision of both the governor and leadership in his office. But certainly it's probably something that they would have to review, I would imagine. But that's a management decision as opposed to the auditor's decision. So.
Right. Oh, I got another one.
All right.
We have had several employees that either voluntarily quit or were terminated in 2019 that were ineligible for unemployment at that time. They filed again in March and April of 2020. I filed the protest timely, yet they still received several weeks of unemployment. How will they handle these situations of overpayment? Former employees who took advantage of the shutdown.
Yeah, I'm not sure specifically on how that will be handled. I know from the stand of those individuals that had received overpayment when they believed they were supposed to receive it, For instance, when we talked about the auto pay system, just sending checks out, even though people may or may not have qualified for it, those who in good faith received an overpayment, I believe Senate Bill 7 of this last session addressed some of those issues where they may not have to repay that. As for those individuals that were offered a job and then did not accept it, I'm not sure how that will be addressed. I know that I recall the governor saying very soon they were going to require at least contacting one employer a week. And my understanding and talking to employers across the state that they're desperate for employees, have very difficult to get people to work. I've even seen signs in various fast food restaurants where we're having a hard time getting employees. Please be kind to the employees we have. So it is frustrating, I know, both for employers and certainly for the hardworking people that get up and go to work every day.
All right. Well, thank you for that answer. And I think that's it. We haven't had any other pop in. And with that, I again would like to thank you, Auditor Harmon, for your time and your information. And we will be posting this recording on our YouTube page for all to see. And if anyone is interested in getting more information from it, they can go to that video or they can contact us or you at any time. So thank you so much.
Thank you all for your time. We really appreciate it. And as I tell everybody, we don't target anyone. We don't give anybody a pass. We just simply follow the data. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Take care.